call the meeting to order, and I know that we're here today to hear primarily about procurement. If I could just take a moment before I introduce our guests, and Ron, it sounds like from the emails today, our survey is ready to go out thanks to you, I think, and with all the technical stuff, and it sounded like that was going out, and hopefully we could get results back before our next meeting, do you think?
I proposed to Audra that we got the results, asked for the respondents to respond by Friday, a week from Friday.
Right.
And then that will be 2 days before our meeting, so we'll have results.
So we can then talk about the results of the survey at our next meeting, which is the 4th of February, I think.
Yeah.
So are there any questions about that from members of the task force? If not, we've been fortunate to have Nikki arrange various guests for us to learn about different aspects of Metro government and as it relates to public integrity and ethics. And that's really the focus of our task force. So Nikki, would you like to introduce our guests today?
Sure. Want me to do it? Yes.
Or you do introduce yourself if you want. Introduce both of yourselves.
Yeah. My name is Talia Lomax O'Neill, and I am Deputy Finance Director. And I also serve as chair of the Procurement Standards Board and the Procurement Appeals Board.
And my name is Michelle Hernandez-Lane. I serve as the Chief Procurement Officer and the Purchasing Agent for the Metropolitan Government.
We really appreciate you all being here. And procurement is one of those areas where, in our discussions, we've met a number of times before today, and we've got some more meetings scheduled after today. But procurement has been one of our topics, and so that's been touched on. But today it's our focus. Okay. So we're happy to hear from you all. I'm sure members of the task force will have questions for you. Is it okay to ask questions as we go? Do you have a presentation?
Well, we have some introductory remarks that we'd like to make.
Perfect.
That we hope can guide today's conversation and provide you some background. And then we can open it up for whatever you guys want to talk about.
Perfect.
Well, that sounds okay.
We're grateful for your being here today, and we turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Again, I'm Talia Lomax O'Neill. Miss Eke, I had a conversation with her last week, and she provided a series of questions to us that this task force wanted to hear from us about. And so first of all, what we'd like to do is walk through just at a very high level our responses to those 4 questions. And I will read those questions aloud just as a reminder before we get into those. But I think today, Audra Ladd, we thought maybe you guys could have gotten it sooner, but Audra Ladd should have emailed the task force a packet of information where we were trying to be responsive to the questions
and we got it, so we do appreciate that.
So you can read that at your leisure, and when you leave here today or whatever, and we can talk about any level of detail in those materials that you all desire. So with that, Michelle, do you have anything you want to add before I jump into the responses?
No, I was actually going to pull up the documents, the direct documents that were emailed from Audra, so I could be looking at the same thing they are. But no, I think that what we've done is tried to provide you with some information that would be most respectful of the time that we have today. Mm-hmm. There are some things here that we're going to want to go into in a little bit more detail because they're salient topics that I think, given the charge of this task force, you'd like to hear from us directly on those things.
Yes.
But the rest of those items, we stand ready if in the future you have any further questions after having digested that information and there are any further questions or concerns, or you just want to have some conversations about processes and procedures. We're happy to have that conversation in the future as well.
Great.
And we're happy to come back.
That's very kind of you.
If you guys feel like, because this work is very complicated and highly regulated, this work is.
Yes.
And very, very specific. So we would say that we don't want you all to think that we're just here today to take your questions. We're more than happy to come back.
We're very grateful. That's great.
Okay, is that me? I don't want that.
We all have that.
So I'm going to put that to the bottom.
Yeah.
With that, I'm just going to read the question that was
Sure,
presented to us.
sure.
And refer to the packet of information that was sent to you.
Yes.
And just, I'm not going to read this document for you. I just want to walk through how we've responded. The first question presented to us was, please provide an overview of procurement functions and processes, as well as training provided to procurement staff, including training on ethics and conflicts of interest. We have provided you information relative to the charter, the Metro Charter, which again provides the rules and regulations for how things happen in Metro regarding procurement. We were very specific in our materials that there are entities within Metro that the Central Procurement Office does not do purchasing for. For example, lots of people believe that purchasing for Metro Nashville Public Schools goes through central procurement, and it does not. They have a totally different, they have their own separate procurement function. They have their own purchasing agent that processes all of their transactions. Once upon a time, several years ago, they actually had an MOU with central procurement to do some of that back office work for them, but they decided to bring that work back in-house and took it back over there. So if you have questions about Metro Nashville Public Schools, for example, you'd have to invite them in to talk to your task force.
And those are all the portions of the government that are excluded are listed on your
Yes,
response.
they are in these materials,
Yes, thank
so
you.
that you can see exactly who.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, that's very good. Okay. Then we have also provided some information within this grouping about best practices for elected officials and senior officials regarding procurement. A large part of our work that we do is driven based on the National Institute of Government Procurement best practices, because we see that as our they set guiding principles for what a good and well-functioning procurement office ought to look like and the types of things that should be done in the public sector. So we look to that guidance in a major way on how we function our processes. Michelle, did you want to add anything to this specific question?
The only thing additionally that I would add, the only item that I have starred, is that I think that the second item that Talia mentioned related to those best practices for elected and senior government officials is extremely important, especially given the structure. I shouldn't say the structure, but the current council that we have. We have so many new members in the Metropolitan Council. I think it's important for those folks, many of whom represent private sector in many ways and don't have any true exposure to public procurement, which is a completely different animal. I think that is a good tool to have available to them, such that they're able to understand better some of the nuances about government procurement.
Okay. And with that, we'll talk just briefly about processes. Our processes are essentially designed around Metro Code and what is permissible by law, and we put processes in place to comply. And we have a set of procurement regulations that are promulgated by the Procurement Standards Board. And again, I serve as chair of that Procurement Standards Board. The Procurement Standards Board is a board that was established in the Metro Charter. Okay, and the responsibilities of that board, we can get that to you. We have included in your packet a how-to procure manual so that you have an understanding of the information that is provided to the Metro departments regarding procurement activity. And I think you said, Michelle, that was not in the original transmitted documents, and we're going to have to follow up with that document and send that back to you at the end of today.
The attachment list, the zip file, had 13 attachments. There really should have been 14. So that was an oversight on our part.
So you guys get more paper, and that's a very thick document. That may double the size of your document.
If I could interrupt for just a moment. Something that I think is very important to note about this how-to procurement manual, much of what, as Talia has mentioned, the bulk of what you'll see in government procurement is so extremely prescribed. There's a limitation to how much judgment that you can actually employ, because the procurement regulations in the code really lay out the expectations and the framework and the structure for the process. What was missing related to that is something that provided a framework and a structure for our using departments, to our customers that we work with and for whom we procure daily, to help them really understand the why related to the rules and the how that's laid out in the procurement code and the regulations. So I've been in this role a little over 2.5 years now, and this procurement manual, this how-to, is the first such that we have developed, to my knowledge, in the metropolitan government, that really helps using departments understand how to use this process. I think we've done a really great job of creating how-tos for how to use our procurement system and et cetera, but we've not really done a great job of providing them with the resources in the past to help them understand how to use the processes that those systems support. And so this how-to manual really provides them with that detail and a lot of helpful hints and tips that make them better users of the metro procurement process. So I just want to push that out there.
I think that that's a good point, because departments typically, because we have this central procurement office, but lots of work is decentralized, and with the departments, you have departments that hire staff. They don't hire professional buyers, and someone gets assigned as their buyer to do a particular activity. Well, they're not prepared for that when they come in, and they needed guidance on how do I do this and how do I make sure that I am following procurement code. Well, before this manual was available, it was touch and go on whoever they could reach out to, or if they had a good department supervisor, they would advise them. So there was definitely a need to produce that, so that if somebody assumed this new role, that they could do that effectively and within the law. And we did some recent training on that. That's really in the next section. And I think, and all the procurement staff across Metro were brought in to receive training on the rules and the laws, et cetera. And some, quite frankly, I think it scared them a little bit, because they didn't realize that the work that they were doing was under such a microscope. So we've had a significant amount of work that's been done in that area in terms of the training. We have brought in Metro Legal to train the buyers and do an annual kind of procurement law update. And you'll see that was last done back in November. And also ethics training for the procurement staff occurred back in November. And both of those things are annual updates that are provided to the staff.
Just your staff or everybody that has
Those
procurement authority?
The annual legal training and the annual ethics training is provided to the buyers in purchasing. For the first time, we did this more detailed training with the departments to bring them in so that they could get better guidance. And we do plan on offering that quarterly. I think is the plan, to have regular recurring training opportunities for new staff as they come in.
So just to kind of add to that, what we did was held a metro-wide training session where we trained departmental users on a number of different procurement aspects. One element of that training was delivered by then Chief Compliance Officer, that was Judge Patsy Cottrell. And Judge Cottrell came in and trained all of those Metro users on the process as well. From an ethics perspective, that was the focus and the delivery from Judge Cottrell. So we looked at this as being so integral. The public trust is like such the paramount element related to public procurement, if you think about it. And so that's something that we know needs to be part of that ongoing educational opportunity for departmental users. It's something that happens for my staff annually. We're going to be training on, ethics and procurement law via the law department. Of course, they do a really great job, and they've been very supportive in ensuring that we have those opportunities there for our procurement staff, but we also see the need to make sure that departmental users are getting touched on ethics, because staff turns over so frequently. We want to make sure that we're getting that opportunity out there to them on a regular basis.
Okay. I think the last item in this kind of training category we wanted to mention regarding confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements that are required to be signed and approved by the team members at the time we do a procurement.
Yeah, so there are really kind of three touches just to give some sense of, from a confidentiality, disclosure, and non-disclosure perspective. There are annual disclosure documents that are required of all the buyers where they disclose any interest that they have, financial interest and otherwise, that may, potentially give rise to a conflict of interest.
And those are provided, just so that they know who that's being provided to the Metro clerk as part of their annual process for getting disclosure agreements from key positions throughout Metro.
But then each of those buyers is required annually to also sign confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements where they agree basically that they understand the importance and the confidentiality or the confidential nature of the work that they do and how critical the cone of silence and other aspects of confidentiality in the procurement process are to the integrity of the procurement process. And then additionally, beyond that, on each solicitation, which requires the review of any kind of a proposal, every member of that evaluation committee is also required to sign a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement as well. So there are certain expectations that we have for everyone who's touching that process in an effort to maintain the integrity of the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question 2, and again, we'll just kind of, unless you guys want to pause here, we're just going to walk through
No, I
these
think
first.
we'll leave it to you, and then we'll
Okay.
circle back after you finish.
Please explain delegated purchasing and how Division of Purchases supervises departments to ensure that rules are being followed on small purchases less than $25,000. The point that we would want to make to this group today is that delegation is not automatic. It is discretionary and revocable, and that there are processes in place for departments to report back to the Division of Purchases where they have exercised the small purchases, and those are tracked. And we have the Office of Financial Accountability goes in and on a rotating basis, on a sampling basis, test compliance with those delegated authorities. So they would go out to see, if a department reported properly and if they've got the documentation within their files to support the purchases. Michelle, anything you want to add to that?
Nothing. I mean, well, yes, the nerd in me is very excited about that because that is a new element as well. It is something that is missing and has been very much needed to include this as part of that review process, that an entity external to the procurement division is engaging related to one of our processes. And I think that that's a big deal. We could go in and kind of take a look at it ourselves, but we have folks who are trained auditors, and they know exactly what they're looking at and how to maintain the integrity of their samples and et cetera, taking a look at these processes and then letting us know whether or not there is appropriate use of that delegation. So I'm excited about it. So.
Well, and something else on the horizon is right now that is all self-reported, and we are looking at technology enhancements so that we don't even have to have the self-reporting component, that we'll be able to automatically capture that information when the quotes come in and be able to just pull that down. So that's kind of the next phase, kind of a technology solution.
And so as of July 1, I believe it was July 1, maybe July 5, the delegation authority, which really what that means basically, just to kind of, further express it, is that departmental users, and really delegate it through to the department head, has the authority to make releases against existing Metro contracts up to $25,000 without it having to come to the purchasing or procurement division. It also means that they have informal purchase authority to make purchases up to that amount with some rules. And those rules are expressed in the delegation of authority that is granted them. So they're basically told the do's and don'ts, the cans and can'ts. The scripture and verse is cited for them in that delegation, so they know exactly where to go to look at what the rules are as well to further understand them, and to have that kind of authority. We decided that it was in their best interest and in our best interest to provide them, and our being the central procurement office, to provide departments with a tool that will really aid them in that process and make it a lot simpler for them to solicit quotes and to track them more efficiently. And so we'll be rolling that out, as Talia said, after the start of the fiscal year, to allow for those departments to be able to maintain that information. And then if anyone were to make a request, if this task force or anyone in the public were to make a request for that information, they could pull it very simply and easily.
A couple of things I think that I want to add here is that when a delegation is made, the department head is, in my view, acknowledging that they understand the purchasing rules, and they are saying, and my staff will comply. That's what that delegation is saying when the department head says it. Another point that has not been discussed is that this threshold was recently raised. It previously was $10,000. Internal audit came in and did a review and suggested that we increase this to $25,000 to be at the same level as the state delegated purchase authority. And we did that, and then the state increased the delegated authority to $50,000. So even though we then increased it, we are still behind that threshold that we were trying to catch up to. But we'd rather just be at the 25 and kind of test that and see how that's going before we just leap to a recommendation to jump to 50,000. So I thought that was something that you all probably ought to know, too, that's been increased.
It provides a lot more flexibility to departments, to have that level of authority to be able to make purchases.
Okay. Question 3, please explain the process for amending contracts, including increases to the value of contracts by amendment. The first and the most important thing that I want to respond to on this one is every one of these amendments has to be signed by the mayor.
Regardless of what it does.
Okay? So that is in these situations, there's your final check. Okay? I just want to be absolutely clear on that, and I circled it in red, that we could get through the entire process and the mayor could decide it's not a good thing and stop any amendment. Okay? And then we have outlined for you the general reasons for contract amendments. You could have a term extension. Let's suppose a vendor comes in and says, I need another month to finish this project. They're not asking for any additional money or anything. They just need time. Expanded scope of work. Terms and conditions may change. I remember when, particularly when federal law changes or something like that, we may have to go in and amend every contract that comes through with a particular clause. What's a recent one, Nikki, that we've had to do that? Can you think of we've had to do that on?
The state one, the one about the Iran.
The Iran divestiture, yeah. So all of a sudden, every contract amendment that we're doing, we're adding that clause to every contract now because of that.
Or the health department, just because they're sitting over in front of me, will receive, grants, and we have contracts, and each year a new budget, explicit, is added to it, so we have to amend those contracts, and every one of those, according to the Metro Code, has to be signed by the mayor. Okay.
So again, we've outlined for you the typical circumstances under which a contract can be amended and kind of where the buck stops.
Let me ask you a question about expanded scope of work. If you've already awarded a contract for a specific time based on a competitive situation, why would you turn around and expand the scope of work for only one vendor?
And I would say that this depends on the circumstance. These things are, in terms of the expanded scope of work, these are the ones that are the most complex, okay? Yeah, let's suppose you award, I'm trying to think of an example, a contract, somebody wants to do some electrical work, okay? They get in there, they pull out the plaster, they get behind the wall, just like you are when you're at home. There's something else back there, unforeseen behind that wall. Well, are you going to leave that wall open, or are you going to, every vendor had an opportunity to bid on that at the same time. In that kind of situation, you're not going to restart your bid because you ran into something unforeseen. You're just going to try to negotiate and work with that vendor to get good pricing to fix what they've got before them behind that wall.
But that's more like unexpected,
Yes.
anticipated items. But what about when you expand it for products?
Such as, sorry,
You purchase a product for a particular price.
so a widget that
A
you say you're
widget,
going to
yeah.
buy,
A widget or
20 widgets.
a number of widgets, right? And the bid was a certain amount. And it was supposed to be a one-time contract, or it was a 5-year contract. And then you turn around and expand product and service scope of work.
Okay. Michelle, can you think of an example of?
Honestly, I'm not 100% clear. Are we talking about like an IDIQ type contract?
Regardless,
Well-
whether it's IDIQ or whether it's a purchase. When
Okay,
you,
and
when,
a widget. Okay, let's.
when I'm trying to address the issue is that you have a bid.
Mm-hmm.
It's for a certain item, right? Everybody bid on an item, and then you expand the number of units you want to purchase, or expand the additional services that you want to acquire under that contract to that one particular vendor, and the other vendors have not had the opportunity to respond. How do you address those? Does that occur?
Yeah, I think that there are two veins that we should look at here, because you kind of described two different things. One of those is related to expanded quantities of items. So when we bid out items, when we bid out goods, commodities, we typically will provide an estimated quantity. And that estimated quantity is based upon historical information. So we have some sense of what we've procured in the past. We also inform all of the potential prospective proposers that we don't guarantee any minimum or maximum. So this estimated quantity could be the max, it could be more, it could be less. And so we will then solicit the amount that you will charge us per unit, so that if we do rise above or below, we have a sense of what the unit rate per unit is going to be, regardless of what the quantity is. We typically will then make the contract value an estimate based upon what our use has been in the past. So if we used, this item at $20 million in the past, we may build, a little bit of an additional cushion, for lack of a better term, because we may have additional use under this new contract term, but the value of the individual items, which we don't guarantee minimums or maximums of, are included as part of the exhibit pricing.
Start out, it's $2. It's still $2.
So
it's just a matter of quantity.
That's what people are bidding on, is the unit, the rate that they're going to charge us per those things. That's on those kind of like widget type solicitations, and those are typically IDIQ. That does make a difference to us, because in an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity kind of situation, that's where we're saying to our proposers, we don't know exactly how much of this we're going to use. We don't know exactly what departmental demand is going to be for this, but what we do care about the most is how much you're going to charge compared to you and compared to you. And we want to see who's going to give us the best price on that, regardless of what our quantity is. So they're taking a risk to some degree, because it's really kind of like the best mix of a term type contract and an IDIQ contract put together. That's really the methodology that we have. Now, if you're looking at services, if we have a contract for services, which is kind of that second vein that Mr. Kaur mentioned, I think that you have to really look at what it is we're buying. Mm-hmm. If we're buying architectural and engineering services, for example, and you have design work that is done. And as they're out doing, a certain kind of work, especially if it's related to kind of a build contract that comes afterwards, and they find some things out in the field that require some additional design, you would not go out and separately procure that, because the same design methodology that was used, you want to be consistent in that project. A new designer is not going to come in and pick up the work of another designer. They would want to kind of come in and look at it from scratch. So in a situation like that, it does make sense that you would have that work be amended into the contract. The other thing that I think it's important to think about is if the work that is being amended can reasonably be separately procured on its own, then you should do that. If it cannot reasonably be procured on its own separately, then that is another consideration for you in terms of determining that it should be part of an amendment. That's the way that I look at it. If someone makes an amendment request, and one of the documents that's included in the file that we sent to you is the amendment request form, they're going to detail everything about why they need to make this amendment. If I look at that and say, yeah, does this vendor have to do this, or can someone else do it? If there's some intellectual ownership of work product or something, or intellectual property or something related to it that you can't reasonably have another vendor come in and do the work, you got to consider that. But if it is something that, can be procured by someone else without compromising that work, then we should consider procuring it instead, separately.
And I would say the departments sometimes don't like that when that decision comes forward, and we say that. But that is very much what we have to say sometimes. You need to do a separate procurement.
Well, let me just ask you maybe hypothetical examples that plays out what you're saying, and I'm reducing this to very simple terms. Mm-hmm. If you put out a contract to build a house, or let's say design a house, and you decide you want a 17-story office building, you're not going to permit that under what you're saying.
No. But if you solicit someone to design a house for you, and they design a Quaker-style home for you, and now you have a need to add some other piece to that, you wouldn't go and get a new designer who may come in and say, you really ought to have a Tudor-style home with this, because then you're having to kind of reconsider everything that was designed at the onset and look at it through a different lens.
Then let's change the hypothetical bit. Let's say instead of going out for original bid for the design of a house, you seek bids on the design of a 20-story office building.
Okay.
And in the course of doing that, funds are made available you didn't know, and you think you can get zoning permission to go to 30. What are you going to do with that?
So you started out with 17. Now
20.
you can...
Going to 20 to 30.
How far along are we in the process?
Haven't started yet.
I think that it's reasonable for us to consider whether or not we use that vendor or if we resolicit, because I think that the scope of the vendor pool that you could draw from has now increased dramatically. So firms that might be more willing to submit an offer on a 20-story building versus one who finds their sweet spot being buildings 25 stories and above may be very different. Those pools may be very different. And so I think it is worthwhile to really consider. I think that at the end of the day, we always should be considering what's in Metro's best interest. Mm-hmm. That is paramount to all of it, is what's in Metro's best interest and what is in keeping with public trust. You have to keep those things, in my mind, very balanced. So if we've gotten down the road a ways and there's going to be a financial loss to Metro by resoliciting it, that is absolutely something to consider. But in the situation that you described, where we've not really executed much work on this thing, I think that it would be wise to contemplate rebidding it so that we can see that competition is improved and increased, and increase our opportunities of getting the best value, the best final product for the best pricing.
So the point is, it's really contextual. You have to
Absolutely.
make a judgment call.
Absolutely. On that kind of thing, yes. On whether to do it or not, yeah.
And I think about trying to tie this to a specific Metro project, if you will, or specific Metro work. the best case scenario for an amendment like that, let's suppose it's a metro building, and it was originally one floor, and then all of a sudden you got five floors, okay? What should happen in the process is that is going through this amendment process. This is the best case scenario, and the mayor is making a constructive decision on the front end before that amendment is executed to then go from that one-story building to that five-story building. So you, again, I want to just keep reminding everybody that there's that check in there. Now, has it always been in this government, since I've been around here for 20 years, that they're making that call according to that schedule, and that the mayor's office has always known that they're doing that? I'm just going to call it what it is, scope creep, okay? I would be not being truthful, I think, if I told you that in the past I haven't seen situations where you've got an anxious department that just keeps moving, and then the amendment comes in later. And that's not the way it's supposed to work, and there are controls built in, but they probably could be stronger. You know, so, I mean, I'd be misleading the group if I said that never happened. Yeah.
That's one area where the public could be frustrated because the bidding process, the public bidding process has been sort of avoided.
Yeah,
Is that,
and what has happened there is when that is happening and these departments are managing those capital projects, purchasing is not in the loop on that. Purchasing doesn't know that scope, if you think about it, that scope creep might be happening because you've got a department project manager, if you will, that's managing that one facility that was once upon a time one floor, now it's two floors. You know, so and so purchasing is not going to have a lens into that. Now, should they? Yes.
On the scope creep that you mentioned, and one last question, and then I'll be quiet for a while. I commend you all for putting in a safeguards. And this is only hypothetical, and I'm now addressing a hypothetical that involves a hypothetical mayor, not the current mayor.
Okay.
But let's just assume hypothetically that we have the 10-story building, that the decision's made to go 20. And the architect who originally got the contract is a big donor of the mayor.
Ooh, that's a huge conflict.
Well, what do you do? I mean, how actually would you handle that?
First, we would need to be. We don't check for that type of donor. I mean, you would hope that you would have someone that would disclose, that the mayor would disclose, any mayor that's sitting in that slot would disclose that relationship and recuse themselves, is what I would think. And then if the mayor recuses him or herself, then what?
Since that's the main check.
Since the mayor's the final check on the amendment, what if the mayor has a conflict of interest?
Well, I'm not aware that campaign contributions that are made pursuant to state law that are legal play a role in the procurement process. I mean, I'm not aware that that's a consideration that's made by procurement.
When you say a big donor, there are caps on what the donations can
There
be.
certainly are caps, and of course we all know that you can bundle and get around those caps. But again, the point is, we're not necessarily talking about what's legal.
Right.
And as you stress in your materials that I did have a chance to go through this morning, it's not just the actual legality, it's the appearance of fairness and propriety. And if you have someone who is a major donor of the person who is going to ultimately make the decision, we of course would initially want to say that that elected official is going to do what he or she should do and disclose it. We hope. That's the point I'm trying to make. We hope. But it seems to me, and having represented government procurement agencies, I know the rock and the hard place. And for you all, or for a procurement officer having to go in to say, you better watch this one. It's going to bite you. You know, I assume that doesn't go on a lot, or does it?
Well, we don't check campaign.
You don't check.
Yeah, not for campaign
Campaign
contributions. You know, you got me, really, I'm thinking about how do you thwart something like that before it gets to the point of being presented to the mayor?
Yeah.
You know, that to me
That's
is
a
kind
good
of,
question.
yeah.
Is there an obligation on the architect to disclose some sort of conflict of interest in the bidding process? And if so, I doubt it says like, you know, campaign donations, but maybe it could or should. I don't know.
Or any kind of personal conflict of interest. Or,
Yeah.
But do they have an obligation to disclose a conflict?
There's a, for every solicitation that we have these affidavits, and conflicts is part of that, but I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty certain that it's not as defined as what is described.
It would
And again, this is all
reference.
hypothetical.
No, but I mean, that's a good,
That's a good question.
I have a quick question on the IDIQ process. So are there instances where you're off the mark a substantive amount, whether positive or negative? So you go out and you say, on average, we need 10 copiers in this order. Something happens and now you need 50, which is substantive. Do you have those instances where that might affect a bid? Because the fair price on 10 copiers is going to be way different than 50 copiers.
yeah. If the estimate from the departments are just significantly off, we have one amendment that we're working right now where, you know, the department's needs are almost double what they anticipated at the time that they established the contract. We're reprocuring it.
Okay.
You know, because the idea there is that if people had a better, potential prospective offers, had a better sense of what this could mean to them in terms of, you know, a final contract, then your responding pool may have been different. It may have been augmented.
A lower price because the quantity appears to be much greater.
That as
So,
well.
Yeah.
And I noticed on the amendment form, you have a increase in value condition. Just asking, would there ever be a need if there was a decrease in
That
value?
is such a good question, and I'm glad that you asked it. Yes, that does happen, and usually the departments, that's not usually something that the departments will say, oh, we need to amend our contract down. Usually that is initiated by our division, and we'll say it, you know, let's free up this and have truth in, you know, contracting, have a clear representation to the public, because all of the information is made readily available to the public of what the contract value really is. So if you're only going to be using, you know, $100,000, but you established the contract value at $350,000 and there was some change, we had that, oh gosh, it was one for the mayor. I think it may have been under the Barry administration. I can't remember exactly. But we made it a point to go ahead and amend that contract down so that we could accurately reflect what the true contract value was. So usually that's initiated by us. I can't tell you that I've known of a department who will send in an amendment request to go down in value.
Is it true that Metro has the capability to end all contracts at notice by just, I don't want to buy anymore? Can Metro decide that they don't want to fulfill a 5-year contract after 1 year?
There's a standard term that is included in
All contracts.
In all contracts. Nikki can probably recite it to
Basically,
you.
with 1 or 2 months notice,
Yes.
right?
Well, 30
Yes,
days.
but that's in general, but there are some contracts where there is maybe capital outlay from the contractor at the beginning. So you can't just terminate that contract and walk away.
But if you
There
buy
are some
widgets-
consequences.
if you
You
buying
have to
widgets,
pay.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're buying widgets, right?
Yeah,
if you
in
go
general.
from 10,000 to 50,000,
Exactly.
you can decide that, hey, I'm gonna just buy buy half of that
Yeah.
and then rebid it, right?
Yeah, in general. Yeah.
Right.
For those
So-
type of but
so
they are more.
those type of things,
Yeah,
right?
those fundamental contracts.
So, you know, where we have substantial differences in initial contract, right? And you look at the number of increasing widgets, right? Looks like to me that there ought to be a cap on how much a contract can be extended. Is there a contract, is there a cap on how much contract can be extended for a particular item?
No.
All right, okay.
Every contract has built into it, most standard contracts, let me not say every, I don't want to be that final, 3 different ways that we can terminate the contract. We can terminate it for cause, we can terminate it for notice, and usually, and I don't want to step over the Metro legal representative, but usually it's a 30-day notice, and then the other is due to funding availability, which is an immediate termination. So if we look at an IDIQ contract and we determine that we're spending significantly more than was anticipated at the onset in terms of the estimate, we are able to give that vendor a 30-day notice at the point that we're prepared to do so. From a, procurement responsibility perspective, it would be our job to ensure that we've completed the procurement process to have a new vendor in place so that we don't have an interruption of service or widgets, if it's widgets.
Okay. I just wondered whether or not there was a cap, because it looks like to me that you should have a reasonable cap. If you anticipate your needs going to be $5 million over a 5-year period, and now it goes to $8 million or $10 million, right? Then that's a substantial increase for that, right? So there should be, I would anticipate some reasonable, especially for general items that are widgets, to say, hey, we can get a better deal.
And I think that's what Ms. Lynn was describing
Right.
earlier in terms of purchasing, kind of looking at the actual activity to see when it might be necessary to kind of revisit the terms of a contract. Okay. This is all really good. We'll come. I know you guys are probably just got tons of more questions, but
I'll let you keep going.
I only have one more question here, and then it's free for all. We're here for however long you need us. Please explain any oversight of the Division of Purchases that ensures procurement rules are being followed. Not only do we highly regulate, we are highly regulated. You have the Metro Charter and the Metro Code that has all these laws and rules that we have to follow, and we have provided those to you, and you can read those at your leisure. But then we also have the Procurement Appeals Board and the Procurement Standards Board, and those are boards that are set out in the Metro Code and their responsibilities. Nikki serves as staff attorney for both of those boards. Metro Internal Audit comes in and they do audits. We have provided copies of 2 recent audits that were done. I previously served in the role as finance director for the city, and so the first audit that you have in there, it was requested by me as finance director. That was one of my first things I did when I came in, is ask internal audit to go in and review the purchasing division and to give us some suggestions for improvement. And they gave us lots of suggestions, and we are tracking those, and we are implementing the recommendations since they came forward, and we see that I will say this for me. I see an audit as a tool for a manager. I have never seen an audit as a bad thing. And
They always have management suggestions.
They always have management suggestions, and that's why I go looking for auditors, and I don't wait for them to come visit. I want them to come in and look at our operations. So yes, they found some things that we could improve, but that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to get some suggestions for improvement, and we were happy to get those. And then the most recent one was the cooperative purchases audit, and I think they thought that they were going that this was going to be like a big, heavy lift for them, and then they showed up, and we had done less than one hand's worth of cooperative purchase agreements in the last 5 years or 4 years or whatever. It was less than one hand. So
It was a 24-month period.
yeah.
The timeframe.
Yeah, so that was a fairly quick review, but internal audit does come in and look at our processes. And then again, we've mentioned to you the Office of Financial Accountability and how we are using them as a separate kind of group to come in and look at processes. We have initiated an annual self-assessment process that purchasing will be doing, and Office of Financial Accountability will be coming in there and kind of checking in on purchasing to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that's it. We're excited about that. That's a first.
Coming in new to this specific role, I've been in government procurement for almost 23 years, but coming into this role, having an audit that was so heavy with observations and recommendations. In the old days, they used to be called findings. Now they're called observations. But it was very loaded.
There's still findings.
Are there still findings? Okay. But to have that was, I have to say, a little bit disheartening just because the level of, or the numbers, I should say, of observations. But it was also very encouraging to me because it provided a springboard in my mind for where we go in terms of making corrective action related to those observations and recommendations. The self-assessment is a tool, and we developed that. We also presented that information related to the self-assessment to the audit committee so that they know that, one of the very specific recommendations was how do you go forward ensuring that we're not constantly back in the same place, in a period of years. How are we having continuous improvement, propelling the organization as a best-in-class procurement organization forward? And so the answer to that was to have an organizational self-assessment that looked at a variety of different items to ensure that we're engaging in kind of a mini audit, if you will, of ourselves on an annual basis, so that when the next internal audit, the next performance audit is done, we already have all of the issues, that we knew to be in the past audit, as well as items that we know from our research with peer cities to be best practices. We already have that lined up as part of our organizational self-assessment. The NIGP, the National Institute of Government Purchasing, has been a phenomenal tool for us in kind of gauging ourselves across the nation or with other procurement organizations across the nation and understanding what kinds of things we ought to be putting in place as a best practice option on a number of fronts.
Okay.
Thank you. So that's
what we knew you wanted to ask.
it already led to some questions.
And I'm sure you guys have many.
Yeah.
Annual assessment.
Yes.
Right. So when was the last one completed?
This will be our first one.
This is a response to the audit, so we are initiating that in response.
So that's the form, but you hadn't completed it yet.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So
One of the things, I'll kick it off because I know other members of the group will have questions, but maybe a question might be, you all have been wonderful and so forthcoming about what we've asked. I really appreciate it. What would you all see as the areas where the public might have the most questions about the integrity of the process? I mean, would that be, you sort of identified one where maybe, there's judgment and involved in the amendment process and the scope of amendments. I'm not sure that's whether it's big or small, but are there areas where you think, I'm talking about perception now, not necessarily, where the public might perceive.
I'm just thinking about some recent issues.
Yeah, and let's talk,
And, there's this, I remember there was this perception, if you will, that procurement was hiding information during an active procurement. Well, if you look at everything that we talked about today, where we say people have to sign confidentiality agreements, and while you're in the middle of a procurement, you don't talk about what's going on in that procurement, and there are rules about that. There's this perception, if you will, that we are not completely transparent. So so I would say you've got this push and pull between
You've got
trying
competing
to be
considerations,
transparent, but also having the need to follow these very, I'm going to very detailed procurement rules and laws that we have to
And there's
follow.
a tension there.
And
there's
there
a
is
tension
an
between
absolute
those.
tension there,
Yeah.
and they have two totally different.
Right.
There are two totally different needs
Right.
and experiences there.
Right. That's helpful.
And that is.
That's a
I mean,
helpful
I don't have a
point.
solution for that, but that's problematic.
And that's I wanted to mention that's a state statute
Yes.
that requires that certain materials be kept confidential
Yeah.
until the
made.
award is made. So
And the purpose for that would be so that the government can get the best terms. I mean,
Right, you're
that's in
still
part. I mean,
evaluating it.
Right, right. So that's one policy goal, but
But
you
you
know,
just use I think it's the operative term, until the award is made.
is made.
And we
the
make it,
intent.
and we do make it available.
And then
at that
everything
time.
would be available after.
After
an award
that,
is made.
It's open for public inspection.
And that's.
And we do that
And
as soon as the award
that's
is
the working
made.
papers, that's whatever is in the file involving that.
All of the award justification, any information is available. Now, there's some details that are just standard as a part of the procurement file.
Right.
But then there's some other things that, tend to be discoverable, people request under the Open Records Act.
But see, we have, and actually there's a drama precisely that playing out in the General Assembly right now, where you have a member of the General Assembly using the Public Records Act to get information involving a procurement for insurance services.
Oh, my.
And of course, the executive is taking the position that that's confidential. So, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but I do have some questions about the intersection between your office and the elected officials, whether it's the council or other people.
Yes.
But I mean, that's playing out right now. That it's going to be open for public inspection after the procurement,
Exactly,
not during.
exactly. But that has been a just constant source of discussion.
And just as a point of nuance and clarification, because we've talked about different kinds of purchases, you see that process be more played out, if you will, more protracted with requests for proposals, whereas with what we call an invitation to bid, the information becomes pretty immediately subject to public inspection. So there's less of a time frame associated with it, because the idea is that the specifications related to what we're procuring were made public as part of the document itself, and the only thing that is the determinant is the cost. And so our requirements, or the procurement code requires regulations, not code, requires that as soon as those bids come in, it's immediately available for folks to review. No, invitations to bid where cost is the sole determinant. I just wanted to draw the distinction there, because we do have different methods of sourcing. And with a request for proposal, you're going to see there be more of a delay before that information can become made available to the public. Whereas with a bid, it's immediate.
Okay, I want to give you another example.
no, that's great.
Another example of an item that can be concerning, in my view, is when you have vendors wanting to call on departments or elected officials when they know that you are in the development phase of an RFP. They're smart enough to know that you're not going to have this public debate once the RFP is released and you shut them down. But then some of them are very smart. They know when contracts are ending, and they start contacting key officials about, I can do that. I know your bid is coming up. And we encourage people that they probably don't need to be talking to those folks that closely to releasing an RFP. But then there is oftentimes pressure put on by some of those companies, in my view, to department heads and through elected officials and others to just have a meeting with them and hear them out. Well, they don't want to hear from us that we don't think that that's a good idea always, and I don't think that they understand why it's important that they not have those kind of, we might learn something that we didn't know the next cycle. Well, you also may be tainted in your thought of putting together a scope document too at the end of that meeting with that vendor.
Great observation. Thank you. Yeah.
My thinking on
It
it
is.
the initiating activity in the procurement process is the submission of a requisition. Even if the RFP is not developed and fleshed out, if the department has taken that initial step in the procurement process of requesting or requisitioning,
Which may be 3 months before.
they should
it actually
really
goes out.
not be having any conversations with potential vendors about it.
And we
And
tell
that's
them
for
that.
Integrity, ethics.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Exactly.
appearance of impropriety.
And to ensure that they're able to, the appearance of impropriety.
Yeah.
That's where we were on the same track.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
often what can happen is there may not be anything. There may not be any there, but if it looks like there's some there,
Right.
then there's some there.
That's a great way to put it.
And the people that are meeting with these folks, they may not have any ill will or any intention, but they may have a good meeting and go, you know, I saw this vendor, they did a demo for us, and I loved what they did. I'm going to make sure I put that in our specs because I want whatever I get to do that.
There is a procurement process. There's a procurement process that allows departments to get to that. And it is not one that we use very often, but it is a request for information. You know, if you really want to get to the heart of what the market, you know, contains, what's there.
But you would let competing
Solicitation.
vendors make different
Absolutely.
presentations,
And that's
right?
the point.
Right,
That
that's
would
not
be,
just someone
It's not
calling
limited
upon you.
to
there would be a
the vendor who
process.
was able to get in and to get a meeting.
Right.
You know, you use that process for what it is to enable us to develop a soliciting document that meets the full scope of what our needs are.
And you have good guidelines and suggestions about communications like that in the procurement process.
Yes.
But we all know that sometimes those recommendations aren't heeded. What mechanism do you have? Because I would assume that there are occasions when that information will get back to you, that the departments are having that communication. What do you have in your
If we
quiver
find out about
in
it,
terms of what you
purchasing-
can do and what have you done in circumstances?
So
You hear about it.
the requirement for the departments is that if they believe that they in some way have a conflict, they are required to disclose that to me. That is the requirement that is set forth. They are to disclose it. If they don't, and we learn about it otherwise, you know, we have communication with them. I will, and I typically will do that via email and have that communication. They'll, you know, indicate yes or no regarding the questions that I ask, and then I'll say, you'll need to recuse yourself from this process. You should not be involved in this process. And we've only had one situation since I've been in this role where we've had, you know, a departmental user who said, you know, I think this may be, you know, an issue. I'm not 100% sure. And my recommendation was that they recuse themselves from the process just to ensure that we're able to maintain, you know, the integrity of the process itself.
Do they understand what you said, conflict of interest? They may not view having a conversation with a potential vendor.
We define it for them in the
Right.
manual.
Do they understand? So they understand. They should.
They should.
They should be
They
understanding. God bless you.
And to give them those examples.
Well,
That's the only thing you can do is,
Earlier you said that you was just starting this training program for the buyers in these departments.
yes,
And so maybe prior to that, they didn't have the same awareness.
I agree.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about current versus, you know, we talking about something that just happened here where you
Okay.
provide training versus maybe they didn't have the training before. So maybe going forward, we may be seeing process and improvement. But what we're talking about is a history, okay, that we have to address as far as the Public Integrity Task Force, right, and the appearance of impropriety or cronyism and stuff like that. So, you know, the changes that you got in place now, the self-assessment, all of those look good, you know, but somebody's got to perform them, and somebody's got to make sure that they get performed. And I guess one of the questions that we had was really what set of eyes, other than purchasing and procurement, overlooks the awarding of contracts. I know BAA has a role to play in regards to, from an equity standpoint and fairness. Do they issue a report on every award? separate award from purchasing?
What type of a report?
Well, they're supposed to say that all the conditions for either equal opportunity
Oh, yes,
legislation is in
yes.
place. So they issue a
Yes,
separate report?
yes.
It's included?
Yes.
In that price?
It's a part of every award.
Okay.
So there's and we've been doing this for a number of years, well, since the onset of the EBO, and then prior with the other program that was in place. What happens is all the procurement documentation goes to BAO. BAO reviews it, and we're talking about compliance with our programming to promote the inclusion of minorities and women. And BAO will review it, ensure that it's compliant with the program, and then they produce a determination. And that determination lays out who the best evaluated is, what the percentages are, whether or not they were fully compliant with the program, and any special conditions that they think are noteworthy in the notes section, and that's part of the award documentation.
And which body then passes on that report? I mean, that determines that it's complied with. Like, let's say that report comes back and says we've got concerns about whether there was equity in the process. I don't know if that happens much.
Yeah. So whenever solicitation.
Well, what happens then?
When solicitations hit the street, they've got a % goal associated with them that has been developed by the Business Assistance Office, by the BAO. So that's included in the solicitation.
Okay.
Then once the responses come in, the best evaluated is sent to the BAO for review of their compliance with the program.
Right.
The BAO will say yes, they are compliant, or no, they are not.
Right.
If they are compliant, then they are going to provide that they're going to provide the determination either way it goes. But it will detail the compliance of that specific vendor, and that is included with the award. If they determine that they are not compliant, then the way that the procurement code is written, that recommendation of noncompliance goes to the purchasing agent.
Okay.
I have had one of those since the EBO was enacted, and that vendor was deemed non-responsive for failure to comply with the program.
So that vendor then is out for consideration.
They're out of it.
Yeah, I see. It's helpful to understand.
Would you, in your investigation in that circumstance, would they go down to the level of trying to ascertain whether the potential subcontractor or vendor was actually interested or in that line of work?
Yes.
Rather than just saying, we talk to these companies. And
No.
They check them.
Yeah, they're so the goals that are established for the Equal Business Opportunity Program are based on actual marketplace availability. So when the procurement data officer is establishing those goals, she's looking at actual firms and actual commercially useful functions that those firms can perform. And so that's how those goals are established. So those are actual companies that are out there that can do this work, ready, willing, and able to do the work. So if they are included in the proposals, the next step of that, if they're on the team of the winner, is that winner has to produce for the Business Assistance Office a letter of intent. And that letter of intent has to be signed by that firm, that minority or women-owned business, and by the prime contractor. And it details the percentages that they proposed, which is based upon the goal that was established. So it's kind of difficult, for someone to be included under the EBO and not have it confirmed or validated.
And the ready, willing, and able piece is provided by the potential vendor who is certified that he, she, or it are ready, willing, and able to provide this?
The actual ready, willing, and ableness of the firms is established based upon a factual predicate study that we've had commissioned, and it looks at the availability of firms. It looks at the commercially useful functions that they perform, and by virtue of their registration and inclusion in these various lists indicates their willingness to do the work with government. So,
how frequently are those analyses made? Is it annually, every 2 or 3 years?
which ones?
Well, the certification that someone is ready, willing, and able.
So the master database is usually done on a 5-year basis, but it is a living document. So as our procurement data officer establishes goals on projects, she's learning things about those firms. Some of them have fallen out of market, or there may be new firms that have come into market. So the database that she uses becomes dynamic at that point. There are certain provisions that have to be in place, which is your certification with approved or accepted certifying entities, and then the specific codes of work, which is often NAICS codes or NIGP codes that you perform. And that is what determines your commercially useful function. So when she's establishing that goal, she's not putting a firm, that's a caterer into the goal-setting methodology for information technology, because that's not commercially useful. So she's including that firm based upon what they've been certified to do. And the certifying entities typically will, tell me when I'm wrong, will specify the specific code that they certify that vendor to perform. And that is after a review of a number of different things. They're looking at all of their back office stuff, the ownership, the control of the business. You can't have a woman who's the owner of a business, but then she doesn't manage the day-to-day of the business and operate the business.
A lot of the people here are lawyers, so sorry for this question. That's okay. It's not going to be a trick question, though. Is there, with any frequency, litigation over procurement practices? I mean, disappointed vendors who bring suit for saying, hey, I should have gotten that award?
The appeal process.
Up until a year ago,
Yeah.
I would have said no.
Yes.
But I think we've been sued twice in the last year.
Well, I mean, I'm old enough to have remembered that in the past there have been such lawsuits, but I didn't know how frequently that happened. Not frequently, it seems like.
It is not.
I served in the role as finance director, was on the appeals board for 4 years. I think during that time I probably heard less than one handful worth of appeals that made it to the appeals board.
I see. That made it to the appeals board.
So
first it's the appeals board, and then it...
No, appeals board is last.
So
I'd love to hear what the steps are.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm not in that area. So
Yeah.
in terms of remedies, every actual or prospective offerer who feels that they've been aggrieved in the process has the right to file a protest within 10 days of knowing.
That's probably in here, but yeah.
Well, that's actually in the code and it's in the regulations,
right.
and they have 10 days from the time that they know about the conditions that have given rise to their grievance.
Okay.
So there are different types of grievances at different points in the process.
Right.
So at the point that you knew or should have known,
Yeah.
you've got 10 days to file that protest.
Right.
So you can protest the solicitation itself,
I see.
or you can protest the award.
And any
that's the way that-
interested vendor could bring that kind of protest. Or, yeah.
It's an actual or prospective.
Okay, yeah.
And then once
That's
that protest
helpful.
is filed, it is, it is heard, and an attempt should be made to resolve it with the purchasing agent. And I'm getting a little good
Take your
tickling
time.
in my throat. I need some water, really. But
There is
between
water.
the purchasing agent and the vendor, to resolve that issue, typically that manifests itself in the form of a protest hearing that is open and public. Folks can come in and hear that. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. And then after that protest hearing, the purchasing agent is then required to provide a determination.
Yeah.
If the protesting party is dissatisfied with that determination, they then have 7 days to appeal it to the Procurement Appeals Board. Yeah. And they have to deliver that appeal, hand deliver it to the finance director as well as to myself within 7 days of that notification. Once the Procurement Appeals Board hears it, based upon that determination, they may very well say, purchasing agent, the decision that you made was incorrect. We want you to rethink that, and they remand it back to me.
I see.
Or they can say, we think everything was done consistent with the procurement code, the regulations, and state law, and we uphold the decision of the purchasing agent. In which case, I'm going to tread lightly, and Ms. Eke can tell me when I'm wrong on this,
No,
but I think
this is very
I think
helpful.
Chancery Court then
At
is
some
their
point, it's
next
Chancery
option.
Court.
After the appeals board is Chancery.
But that sounds like it's pretty rare, actually,
Yes.
that it gets
To
that far in
Chancery
the
Court?
process. Yes, yes.
It's happened
Except
twice
for
in the
past
last year.
two times,
Yeah.
I understand.
Well, actually, it's happened once because
Yeah.
one bypassed the procurement
Oh, I see.
process.
Yeah.
It was filed by an external
Well,
party.
you're giving me a sense of what I was asking. First of all, there are procedures in place, number one,
Yes.
that are administrative remedies. And then, once those administrative remedies are exhausted at some point, it would be a court.
I have a question. On solicitations that you have, you had the Equal Opportunity Program, now you got the Equal Opportunity Bill. When you have solicitations, will Metro award a contract to any vendor that doesn't have a minority vendor part of the scope of work?
Yes.
Why?
Because the procurement code provides a provision that allows for the submission of good faith efforts. So if we have a specific goal established for the solicitation and that vendor can demonstrate, consistent with the procurement code, why, which doesn't happen very often, but there is a provision in the code to allow it, why they did not meet that goal, and it's to the satisfaction of the specific good faith effort requirements set forth in the code, then we are required then to move forward with the award based upon the procurement code.
Now, let's say, for example, I've done a lot of requests for information. I see a lot of not qualified on a lot of these. These primes send out a solicitation. People look at it, come back, says, oh, that's not in my field, not qualified. Not in my field, not in this area where I do my work, not qualified. This is not the area I work, not qualified. Is that permissible?
I think that what you're describing was something that found itself very manifest under the previous procurement non-discrimination program. I think the life that we're living now with the Equal Business Opportunity Program is extremely, again, prescribed like most everything else in government procurement. So the goals that are established, again, are based upon actual firms that are available in the marketplace. So when those offers come in, you know, BAO staff should be looking at who's being proposed compared to availability of firms,
Right.
you know, and ensuring that the people who are included there are folks who can actually perform ready, willing, and able. Again, they can perform a commercially useful function. They wouldn't be firms that, you know, again, we're buying IT work, and the firms that are included on the forms are caterers. That's not sufficient.
But I heard what you said. You said that under the old program,
That's right.
it was prevalent.
Well, under the
Prevalent.
I didn't.
I mean,
I'm
that's what
sorry.
I interpreted.
Okay, because I didn't say
Okay.
that. But what I did say is that under the old program, you had a different construct that allowed for that kind of thing to potentially happen.
And it happened a lot.
Okay.
I mean, the disparity study says clearly, okay, that it happened a lot.
Well, the
Okay, so let me just finish up. It happens a lot. So from an integrity standpoint, what the citizens of Nashville wants to say is, how are you demonstrating that you've stepped up your game from where it used to be to where it is today? Okay, I hear some statements that you're doing assessments, you're training people, and it's going to get better. But the question is, you know, I'm looking at your KPI report that the BAO sends out. They hadn't sent out one since August of 2009. I mean, I pulled it out this morning. And this is one of the ways I get a check to see what's happening from a procurement standpoint. So I haven't seen a BAO report. I mean, you can go online and check it. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is that let's see the proof. Okay, let's put the document out there online so interested people like myself and other people can see what's going on. There's too much smoke and mirrors that people that want to see, that want to have confidence in government, can't see that we're making progress. All right? There's too much business. I mean, I looked at the numbers again this morning. You spent almost $1.1 billion last year. That's what this report says right here, okay? And if I look at minorities, not counting white women, I mean, it's 3 to 4 or 5%. and it's been that way since 1999. So something's not happening. If we got all of these commercially ready to go people, and they're not getting a shot, something's happening.
Can I jump in?
I mean, you can jump in anytime.
No, I just wanted to say that I'm not going to disagree with anything that you've just said, but everyone needs to keep in mind that the legislation that created the new programming and the new guidelines for small and minority businesses just became effective in July. In July. So much of the data that you are looking at is accurate. It predates the implementation of that program, and the things that we have been talking about today are the things that we are in the process of doing, okay, in order to comply with the new requirements moving forward. Second, I just wanted to say, I'm not going to disagree with anything you say about those percentages, because the disparity study and the reviews that, and the report that came back said that we were not doing a good job.
Right.
It said we were not doing a good job, and that we needed to have different kind of programming and different kind of outreach and different kind and different types of compliance monitoring. So, like I said, I love a good auditor, because they're going to tell you where your weaknesses are. So, the things that you are identifying, we agree that those are issues that need to be addressed. Now we have legislation to support our moving in a different direction, because you have to realize, too, because we are highly regulated, we could only do what we could do with what we had. Now that we have legislation and we have developed some different procedures in order to implement moving forward, you have got to give the program an opportunity to live. It's only been, and it's with, think about this, it was effective July, but it was not effective for the contracts that were already in place. It's effective for new procurements as you move forward. So when you start thinking about that, we've only had about 6 months of experience with a limited amount of procurements. And we do have some more recent data on since the program's implementation, and we can follow up with the committee on that. We can absolutely follow up since the new program has been implemented and what we have done.
If I could add just one thing, Mr. Kaur.
Yeah.
What I would say is, really, I think Talia's on the right track. When you say what was not working in the past, which I think we all agree, wasn't everything that we could have done. The step up for us was the enactment of a race-based program, which was something that Metro had never had before. And so that's our next step in the evolution of our efforts to better include minorities and women in the process. What we see now is the most aggressive effort that we've had, which is race-based subcontracting programming. And as it relates to the reports, and I just think it's fair to discuss this, when we received the open records request from you for the reports, we reported that we were having a transition from our systems, from our procurement systems to a new upgrade, and so we were unable to provide that information for the months of September. And honestly, because September was the first month that we transitioned to our new programming for October. So I will check with Christopher Wood, who is the manager of our Business Assistance Office, and ensure that we have some data that we can provide and make available. But I know that, we are still working through some of those issues. So it's not a matter of not wanting to provide the information. We've had very pointed conversations in the finance department about this, and it's about making sure that we provide you with accurate and adequate information, not just producing a report to say that we're producing it, but that it gives you meaningful and correct information.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that you know that.
All right. Now let me ask you a question. There were some recommendations about a small business reserve bank. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not a bank, but just.
I mean, it's considered a bank where small business have an opportunity to compete. I mean, that report came out in basically of August 2018. the disparity report. The law was passed in January. Where do we stand on that small business reserve?
I want to invite Javel to the table. Are we able to?
Chair.
Yes,
And
of
then,
course.
and the second one is that the disparity study talked about the financing, cash flow. Other places have instituted a loan bank for small businesses to be able to take short-term loans to assist them to be able to do. Where do we stand on providing that type of assistance?
That was not a recommendation.
Well,
of the disparity
I believe
study.
it was.
It was not.
If that was something that was vetted by that Minority Business Council as a potential recommendation, that was not. It was not something that came out of the disparity
I need to
study.
review it again because
I
I think because what they said is about the redlining and the financial practices in Nashville, okay, and the long-term history, it would be advisable, okay, for Metro to figure out a way to provide some type of assistance for. I mean, I'll go and look at the report.
Yeah, I mean, there were 12 recommendations that were set forth in the disparity study. We have implemented all of those with the exception of 2. One of those is really outside of our purview to implement. The other, Mr. Val Watson, who's our business development officer in the procurement division, can talk a little bit more about, and that is related to the small business reserve. And the small business reserve really is a separate pool of procurement activity that is set aside just for competition among small businesses, which meet the requirements established for the small business reserve. And maybe you can tell everybody exactly
Introduce
where we
yourself
are.
and welcome to
Yes.
this is an informal discussion, so we're still fact gathering. But
Thank you for having me. My name is Jerval Watson. I'm the Business Development Officer. I work in the procurement division. Again, I think the title speaks for itself. In business development, I work with all of our businesses, focusing on our small minority and woman-owned businesses to help them develop training. We develop training and help them develop skills to build their business capacity. If I could speak to the Small Business Reserve Program, in actuality, Mr. Core, that was implemented on Friday of last week. Of course, it took a great deal of time because we had to ensure that that this program is able to allow small businesses to participate, but participate in a way that they can actually compete against one another. As we said, it's only small businesses, and so we have to make sure that they have the correct bonding capacity, the ability to perform the work on their own without requiring subcontracting, as well as be able to finance the solicitation. All of those things had to come in place, so we had to set parameters, provide an application. We came up with an application that's I think, and I'm going off of memory, so please forgive me, you have to have $100,000 worth of bonding capacity. You have to be in business for a minimum of 2 years, which is a year greater than what it requires to be fall within our small business, be considered as a small business for Metro. You have to be a registered small business for Metro. You have to provide your amount of employees. There are a litany of things that come with that. That application is actually on nashville.gov, but you have to apply. You have to, that application is reviewed through a group, which includes myself. It includes the BAO director. It includes our admin, as well as the purchasing agent. And what we do is we review those applications to ensure that we feel those individuals will be deemed able to compete against one another.
And to perform the work.
Correct, because that is a requirement. We cannot allow our departments to have solicitations on the street, and we say that this is only going to fall within this particular programming and not have it completed. One of the key factors I think that I should point out is that any solicitation that falls under $250,000 can be reviewed and determined to fall within this category. So what we're doing is trying to ensure that there's a good deal of solicitations available for that small business reserve. But as we said, we want to make sure that we're able for them to pass litmus tests to fall within that program.
So this is going to be reserved for all opportunities below $250,000?
It is up for review to be placed in that. Because, again, there's other things. There's licensures that we have to look into and things of that nature. So what happens is if there is a solicitation that falls under $250,000, then what will happen is it will come to management. We have managers meeting weekly that we review solicitations, and we will determine if there's a viable number of suppliers within that small business reserve. Because, again, if it's under $250,000 and we don't have viable suppliers to compete in the program, then it doesn't make sense for us to apply that solicitation to the program. And of course, that takes time because we have to ensure that those suppliers meet those demands and build our program. That database has to build. It won't immediately go into effect. So if we did every solicitation under 250 immediately, then we wouldn't have anybody to apply.
So how many solicitations did you do in 2019 that was under $250,000?
We can get that information for you. I mean, we don't have that on the spot.
Okay. Will that give them an opportunity to obtain sizable? I mean, it may give them a little bit, but if this is only a small portion of the total pie, we're still not going to make much progress.
Well, the number that we've chosen for the Small Business Reserve, again, comes from the disparity study as well. So part of that disparity study process was what is called a threshold analysis, where they looked at all of our projects or all of our contracts, and then they identified kind of the sweet spot for us, what our average size contract is. I mean, there are some that are on either end of the bell curve, but our average size contract was within that $250,000 to $300,000 size.
Okay. And when you think this will be ready for participation?
It is open.
It's open
currently
now?
The application is currently out on the web. If you go to Nashville.gov, it's viewable and able to access it and fill it out. It's a Google form that you can fill out, and there are attachments that are required for you to complete the application. As that database begins to build and we have the proper amount of suppliers within that database, then we will be able to apply some of those solicitations. Of course, certain industries will grow quicker than others. I mean, construction being the first one, of course. But we really have to gauge that on, like I said, the suppliers that are within that database. We definitely don't want to have solicitations applied to that program when we don't have the viable candidates to be able to compete against one another.
Okay, was there any public notification of that?
Yes.
Okay. What, newspaper?
We actually use email, we're using Twitter, we use our business resource organizations.
I mean, but public notice. I mean, did you put it in the newspaper that the program is available?
We don't publish much of anything in the newspaper just because the reach is significantly greater when we push out via digital and social media. So we're able to reach more and more firms. So emailing all of those firms that are in our registered database to make sure that they understand exactly how to get included and approved for inclusion in the Small Business Reserve, pushing it out to business resource partners, tell me when I'm wrong, pushing it out also via social media. Jerval has really been, I don't want to say experimenting, but it is, with that as a tool to disseminate information, because the goal for us is always to reach as many firms as possible. And what we have found is that social media is really a more effective tool in reaching a larger number of folks to make sure that they know about it.
I was really concerned about the public knowledge about it.
Well, part of that is that we've done.
I mean, if you're going to roll out a program that's beneficial, I would pat myself on the back instead of not letting the public know.
Well, part of that is that you have to be a small business. You have to be a Metro-approved small business, and so in order for us to reach those that are able to apply, as well as those that we would like to become small businesses and then have the opportunity to apply, we determine via us also asking our suppliers what's the best way to reach them. We also work with the Nashville Community Education, which expands our reach as they. And forgive me, I'm under the impression that they send their communication out to a minimum of 8,000 people. And I could be wrong about that number, so please forgive me. But we want to make sure that we reach others that are not necessarily looking for us. We're looking for them. And so with Nashville Community Education, they send their catalogs as well as their communication out to all the citizens in Nashville. So we want to make sure that we reach as many as possible through asking questions and from responses of what we get. We talk to them about how did you find out this information. We've deemed that email, social media, business resource organizations, as well as organizations in general. This is the best way to go.
And that includes those like smaller chambers, the Hispanic Chamber, the Latin American Chamber, the LGBTQ Chamber, various chambers that we have partnerships with to help us spread the word and disseminate information.
For those of us who aren't quite as up to speed on these issues as Alex is, if a procurement is found to be appropriate for the Small Business Reserve Program, what does that mean? What's the consequence of that?
You say.
I mean, so then do you only get bids from
That's
suppliers that are qualified for that program?
Pool for those.
Right.
Okay.
We would look at the availability of firms, of small businesses to do that work. We would look at, the nature of what we're buying in general. We would look at the size of the project. If we determine this fits the Small Business Reserve, we have separate solicitation templates that are used to solicit those services or those specific items. And it very clearly distinguishes that this is for competition among participants in the Small Business Reserve Program only.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Now, and you mentioned competition. Under your rules, can you sole source under this program?
No.
Right, so competition is the key. You're going to have multiple bidders available.
Yes.
Indeed.
And that's part of the availability,
Sure.
of firms issue.
Gotcha.
A couple other questions. Sole source, well, let me go. The cooperative, in your document you sent out, cooperative purchases, is that the same as reference contracts, piggybacking?
I think, yes, some people call it piggybacking.
Okay. Do you know how much Metro does using cooperative piggybacking or reference contracts every year? How much it spends every year?
I can tell you how much we spent in the last fiscal year. I'll have to email it to you. It would be in
I think it'd be worthwhile to share with the board.
It's an insignificant number.
Okay. Also, the total amount of sole source spending. Okay, so sole source spending, reference piggybacking, and the amount of sole sourcing that's done by the department under their $25,000 or whatever the $10,000 goal.
Well, it's 25,000.
Well, I mean, last year was 10,000, right?
15.
So effective July 1. So you want
The last fiscal year.
during the last fiscal year? Okay.
I just want to see how much sole source and piggyback and references contract. Now, does reference contracts avoid the EOB?
EBO.
EBO?
Yes, it
It
does. And I don't want to say it avoids it, but sole source emergency type procurements are not subject to the Equal Business Opportunity Program.
Why?
Because that's the way the code is written. It says for any bid, for competitive bid that we receive, here's the process. And for sole sources and emergencies, you don't have competitive bidding.
Well, what about reference contracts? Those can be seen as bypassing procurement requirements, right?
I would not agree with that. I think that cooperative purchasing is a procurement methodology that is allowed by state law and by the Metro Procurement Code. One of the actions of the Procurement Standards Board, I guess about 3 years ago now, was to build a provision in that prevented the omission of any consideration of disadvantaged business inclusion in cooperative purchasing. So if we are looking at engaging in cooperative purchasing for any kind of service at all, there's a requirement built into the procurement regulations requiring the purchasing agent to have a consultation with the finance director, who then must agree on the appropriateness of that cooperative purchase.
It's not always been there.
And that has not always been there.
Okay. All right. So if we can get a feel for how much the cooperative agreement is, sole sourcing,
I really think
because
you would revisit the internal audit document. They actually did a recent audit on cooperative purchases. And that is available in your packet.
I I did take a look at that. It takes some mining to get that information out, but I'm just suggesting that if you're going to provide us information, there's some flashpoints that lay people look at, sole source contracting, the sort of contracting we're talking about, and it might just be helpful to know not only the number of instances those were invoked in the last fiscal year, but the dollar amount that they involved.
Okay.
My suspicion is they're relatively small, and the dollar amount's relatively small.
Well, some of them pretty big, 40,
Well-
50 million.
Well, I mean, we'll find out. We'll find out. But the number's important, but the dollar amount to me would also.
The other thing to note on sole sources that are above $250,000, the ultimate determinant on that type of a purchase is the Metro Council. So the procurement code requires that if we are looking to enter into a contract in excess of $250,000, where the procurement methodology was sole source contracting, then council has the ultimate oversight on those by.
One up there on the agenda tonight.
Yeah.
And for the ones over 250,000, see, what I was thinking, and perhaps I didn't make it clear, is that we know that the departments have been delegated authority to do these things, sole sourcing and some of those things under a certain amount and certain conditions.
They have not been delegated the authority to engage in sole sourcing.
They can't do that.
The only.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. They had at least 3 bidders under 2,500.
Yeah.
Well, the point I was trying to make inartfully is that, and I'm going to analogize this to the opioid crisis. What we started tracking was not just the amount of pills sold. We started looking at it by patient and by physician.
Yeah.
And so what we saw in Tennessee and are still seeing is that we had a number of physicians that were over-prescribing. And I guess the question I have is, in your oversight of what's going on in the department and agencies that you are involved with, do we track any data about agencies that might be using some of these contracting techniques over and above other agencies?
In comparison to others, yes.
And when you find that, do you ask why? Is there something unique about these agencies where that's particularly appropriate for them and not others?
We do. Every sole source that is received is reviewed individually. Every request is reviewed individually. Some of them are, so the way that the procurement regulations are written, there are certain types of purchases that are automatically approved for sole source, and there's a list of those things. There are others that it's not clear that this is the sole source, so we engage in a vetting process. So we have an individual that vets everything that comes in where, I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is not specifically exempted by the procurement regulations. We need to have this vetted to determine whether or not there's any other vendor in the market. If we can find someone else who does this kind of work, then it's not a sole source. And if that's the case, then we deny the request and we send it back to the department.
And I think that's a great prevention tool. But what I'm wondering is that, and again, I'm being very simple in a very complex area, but if we were saying at the end of the fiscal year, if Agency A is using some of these, I'm not calling them questionable, but these procurement techniques
more than
15 times more than anyone else, does somebody in your department sit down and say, what's going on here? They do. You do.
No.
You don't.
I can't tell you that we sit here and go, I mean, we do have, certain departments that we know, they have water services, for example. The entirety of our water system is built upon certain brands of water pumps, water machinery, et cetera. So in some instances, they're going to have more of these than others, because to not do it would require us to completely dismantle our water system and re-procure it.
And see, I'm not against sole source contracting, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there would seem to me, but horizontally, there might be a different view of things if at the end of the year, it's like whack-a-mole, that somebody is way up here, just for somebody to say, what's going on? It may be perfectly fine, but at least somebody's looking at it longitudinally rather than case by case.
Yeah, and those sole source KPIs, if you will, are presented to the Procurement Standards Board on a quarterly basis. So to the point of what you said today, some information that may be beneficial and useful to them might be some more descriptive detail around the departments that are making those sole source requests. So that may be something that they would be interested in and we could include.
In terms of things that I have seen thematically, if you will, is it very much is about infrastructure and things like that. Car parts and things like that. You know, if Metro decides it wants to buy Chevys, we're not gonna put out a bid and buy Ford parts. Okay, we're gonna put out a bid for somebody whoever is the supplier for that. ITS projects, software arrangements. Those again, that's a theme. Those contracts are very expensive, but you are dealing with the big boys such as Microsoft. Okay, so in the middle of you deciding what kind of platform you want to be in, are you going to change from Microsoft to some other platform when every technical system throughout entire Metro is the backbone is kind of a Microsoft platform. So you will see lots of contracts associated with IT projects because there are all these interfaces. Think about in your own organizations when they have 5 or 6 different systems and they all have to be interfaced, and if you change one of them, then everything else in between breaks. So you do get a lot of ITS projects. I would say you get sole source requests for in some public safety areas, particularly around police and fire. Police and fire, and some of the materials. And I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but the police department's got a crime lab out there, and they follow national best practices on what types of scopes they use and what types of materials in order to do their investigations, and you receive very elaborate descriptions from them on their sole source requests.
To add to this, just one last thing that I would say is I'm probably a less popular person with, say, police and fire, just because, I mean, they often are, but I think that they are very knowledgeable and learned. They are the SMEs in their work. We still vet, and what we'll do is instead of establishing a sole source contract for the standard amount of time that we're allowed to do it, what I'll say is let's do it for an incremental period of time and let's look at what happens with the market. They may be the sole source today, but they may not be the sole source in the longer term of it. And so, I've gotten pushback until we can have good, productive conversation about why we're looking at doing it that way. The sole sourcing tool is one that should be used only when we are absolutely certain that, this is the sole source or there's proprietary compatibility, and that isn't always the reason to do so. But I do think that when we're making decisions about enterprise solutions, et cetera, to the extent that we're able to move forward with a competitive solicitation that gets us there, we have to be reasonably expecting that there are going to be future elements that are going to be sole sourced because of the competitive solicitation result that you got previously. So we may solicit for this specific solution, and by virtue of doing that and making the business decision about where we're going to go, are we going to operate, a Microsoft, enterprise, or are we going to be, an Apple shop, or what are we going to be? There are certain things that now we're kind of funneled, committed is a good word, to using those kinds of things. And so we have to consider that. And when we're ready to make a decision that this isn't the enterprise solution that we're going to use anymore, then we need to be soliciting it competitively.
Yeah, but if you're using software is a commodity. I came from the industry. There's silver, there's gold, there's platinum, there's enterprise. And so when you're soliciting software, from a competitive standpoint, you want to go with the people that are at the very top, that's closest to the manufacturer. Those are the people that has the highest accreditation from the software developer. They have the best services, and they typically offer the best prices. And when we look at justification, you want to make sure that you're getting sole source from somebody that's playing up in that role, or at least have some kind of competitive bid situation. Because software is something that is something that anybody can provide from a pricing standpoint. That's a player in Oracle or Microsoft. So when I was IT vendor, I was at the very low level. I could provide software for both of them, but not at a competitive rate. Gold cannot provide the same competitive pricing as a platinum, and platinum cannot provide the same pricing as enterprise class. So you have to understand the levels of how they play in the game to make sure you're getting the best possible price.
And that often dictates demand. I mean, because of the numbers of users and then subsequent licensees that Metro requires because of all the employees that we have, most everything that we're procuring is at the enterprise level, which kind of limits us in terms of the folks who can actually provide what we need.
But they still can compete.
Are there other questions from members of the task force? Or?
Real quick.
Okay.
This shows my ignorance. You've given us the Metro, the ordinances, the regulations, the state laws. Do you ever encounter any circumstances where if you're using a procurement that involves federal funds, that it imports federal restrictions?
All the time.
So, because part of what we're trying to do in this report is identify the sources of authority. So, in fact, there are going to be circumstances where you import the federal
would
rules.
tell you not only do I have to follow EPA requirements, but I'm under a consent decree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets to the requirements that we set forth in the solicitation itself.
Yeah.
But typically, when we are receiving grant funds from the federal government, they will have specific requirements that we follow our local procurement laws as it relates to fulfilling that grant. So we are often given the opportunity to ensure that we're following our own laws and rules in the execution of that grant, and then we have to be able to demonstrate that to the grantors when they audit or review it.
Would you run into any circumstances, and this is opposed to a procurement rather than a direct grant from the federal government, where you would import the Hatch Act into your procurement rules?
I think that could happen. Nikki, I mean, the Hatch Act, I mean,
Into our procurement rules?
I mean,
he's just
again, I'm just asking hypothetically that
Because of
if you
whatever
accept
the
federal
purpose.
funds, there are occasions where you take the strings that come along with those federal funds.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if there's any circumstances where, if we're making a procurement using either all or in part federal money, where we've run into a circumstance where we have that.
Yeah, I mean, whenever there is a federal grant, it comes with certain
Certifications of
requirements.
assurance.
Yeah, and those requirements have to be followed in the expenditure of those funds.
So
whatever they may
probably
be.
what our report ought to say, without going into excruciating detail, is in fact that procurements using federal funds may also bring in restrictions and requirements from the federal law, whether it's statutory law regulations or consent decrees, as you say.
It could happen.
It could.
It does
I mean,
happen.
I think it happens all the time,
Yeah.
particularly with public works projects and streets and roads, and when you get DOT
that's-
involved.
But I think that manifests
Say that.
itself more so in the requirements that we're required to include in the solicitation itself.
Right, but it's included in the procurement life cycle,
Well,
that's
and
what I
see,
meant to call it.
and again, the reason why I was asking that question is that even the United States Supreme Court has said that if a state or local government accepts federal funds and the federal government has imposed reasonable conditions on those funds, they have to follow it. And there was actually a case that the U.S. Supreme Court decided that involved highway money, where the state had a board of citizens who was deciding who was going to get the money, and one of the members of that board was the head of the Democratic Executive Committee in the state. So the federal government took the position: you either fire him or lose your money. And the state complained that that was terribly unfair, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, it's not. You took the money with the conditions attached, and so you want your highway money, or you want to keep this political actor making decisions on where
Right.
the money goes. So,
I don't know how much more time you have, but
We're going to have to wrap up
well,
probably about
well, let me just follow up on that.
if we come back, I'm going to tell you about the 2010 flood.
We may invite you back because it's a complex topic, so.
Emergency exception to about any of these rules. But your public procurement guide is really an excellent document.
That's the
And-
NIGP, we can't take credit for.
No, well, I'm just saying,
Just share that.
I had not seen it before, and I assume that members of the council and high-ranking metro officials are given copies of this, or it's made available.
They have access to it. We have met with some of them on a case-by-case, and we provide it to them, but, we definitely can send that to John Cooper to
That could be
provide
part
you.
of the training, couldn't
And see,
it?
and especially on pages, well, their pages aren't numbered, but they say a few categories of ethical situations to reflect on, and they list what I think is one of the best listing of ethical situations, from bribery, of course, to conflict, gifts and special needs, failure to comply with law and policy, lobbying that you've discussed, supplier relationships, and confidentiality. So I really think that this is, what you said is completely consistent with this. But my question is this, and again, I'm sounding like a cynic, and it's probably because I am. But what we know is that elected officials get where they shouldn't be a lot.
Absolutely.
And they're not answerable to you, and I understand that. But in this world, we all become aware of these things. So the question I have, what mechanisms are built in? Is there an ability for folks in your department to report, to publicly disclose? Is there some mechanism? And the answer is probably there's no formal mechanism. And I understand the problem is if somebody decides to be a whistleblower, then bad things happen.
We have been approached by council members in the past and told them, you should not be talking to a particular supplier. Don't do it, stop.
Well, and some do, some don't.
Right, but we've not escalated that or
And some people,
publicized that in any way.
hopefully they're aware of the $100 in gifts and the $25 this and that. They're aware of that, but many of them are probably not, and they probably are not aware that going to 5 Titans games during a season as a guest of somebody who has a Metro contract might be a problem.
Or calling me, asking me who proposed on a certain project might be a problem.
Well, that's right, and so it sounds to me like is that this piece in terms of education and communication with the elected officials is really something that's almost been a no man's land, if I can use that term. We're not going there,
Yeah,
but it sounds like we may need
to go.
to go there. Is that,
Agree.
It's fair.
I don't want to overstate it.
No,
Okay.
it's not overstated.
That's so helpful.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Are there other questions? I want to really thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. It's been extremely helpful, and we are all on a learning process before we report. So if we have more questions, we can follow up.
Absolutely.
You told us that at the beginning, so we might have to do that.
You can tell we are an open book. What do you want to know?
We really, you've presented yourself.
Except if it's an ongoing procurement. I'm not telling you anything.
Bill, one question we asked.
Ron, you have a question?
One question we asked audit was, is there anything on your wish list that we can include in this report? Things that can help you do your job better, or?
Well, I think you just got to one of them. Honestly.
That's great.
I would like to think about that if I could.
You certainly can, and
Yeah.
we're open too. So as we're inventing this, I mean, and we're open to suggestions and input, very much so.
Yeah.
So,
Your 2 boards that you mentioned, are those made up of Metro employees?
Well, one of those boards does have Metro employees on it. That's the Procurement Appeals Board. It is chaired by, I was about to say by the Finance Department heads that sit on that board. But the Procurement Standards Board is not. I mean,
finance director's designee sits on it, the law director sits on it, and then you have 3 people from the outside.
Are they filling out conflict of interest disclosure statements?
Confidentiality, yes.
So they're going through all.
They have to provide that disclosure as well.
Like any board, I mean, we learned about that from Nick.
Council and be confirmed to sit on the board.
Thank you all again. We're going to come back on February the 4th and maybe talk about our survey and maybe follow up with our discussion of what we've learned from the past 2 meetings. And thank you all again. We're adjourned. We're adjourned.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, you're... Yeah, so we didn't go around and do that at the beginning.
Yeah, we got the
I know
list of
Mr.
names.
Poor because I've known him for a long time, but he's the only one.
And I'm happy to do that. And
Thank you.
I'm Bill Harbison, and I'm the chair of the task force, and I'll just let people go around the room.
I'm Martha Boyd. I'm an attorney at Baker Donaldson.
Alex Cool.
Ron Snitker, I work at Waller in Business Development, but I'm the president of the LGBT Chamber, so we
Okay,
actually
very good
met
to
a
meet
few times in the past. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm
You
Bill
meet so many
Koch, I'm
people.
the dean of the Nashville School of Law.
I'm sorry.
Bill Koch, dean of the Nashville School of Law.
Okay, very good.
And spent
He's a
about
legend.
8 years representing the Tennessee Department of General Services.
Children's Services? General. Very good to meet you.
And I'm Audrey Anderson. I'm a lawyer at Bassberry and Sims.
There's a lot of lawyers. Not everybody. Not everybody.
Okay, it's good to meet you all.
I'm glad you asked me to do it. And, you know, I jumped right in at the beginning, so I'm glad you asked me to do that.
I mean, I'd read through the list, but I didn't know faces with names,
No, it's
so it's
very
good
helpful
to know
to do
that.
that. And,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.